What if Ned Stark demanded a trial by combat? Let's explore the depths of it in the video.
No!
I did warn you not to trust me.
Ned can only stare out in shock as the last of his men are slaughtered. He doesn't trust himself to breathe as he looks back at Littlefinger and then at the Queen standing before him. In minutes, the throne room is secure and Ned is brought to his knees as he looks up at the Queen and Joffrey.
Kill him. I command it.
In due time, my child. First the traitor must confess. Do this, and I guarantee we shall be merciful.
Ned glances around at the room, watching the men surround him. Most have their swords drawn and ready to hack him apart as soon as the command is given. But some don't have their weapons out, and it is them who has Ned's attention. Among them is Ser Barristan. And then he makes a desperate gamble.
Is this really how you wish to start your reign, boy? To become a tyrant on your first day?
Silence. You wished to usurp my son. Before that, you allowed your wife to kidnap my brother.
Aye, and he was set free after a trial. Do you speak of injustice but deny me the same right? If I'm to be punished then, I demand a trial by combat.
The room goes silent as they all look at him. Joffrey is seething, and his knights look ready to finish the job. But Cersei is furious. Slowly, she growls and nods her head.
Fine then. If you wish to die with steel in your hands, so be it. Unless you can find a fool willing to die for you.
I'm that fool.
What? No. Get back, sir.
Do you not value that white cloak of yours, sir? This trial has the king as a defendant. It would be improper to have a member of the Kingsguard champion against him.
Begging your pardon, your grace. But it seems like Joffrey is not king yet, and the accuser is also speaking on behalf of the king. Though you ripped apart that parchment, it is still the king's words. As a Kingsguard, I am obligated to defend them.
Very well, then. If it is truly treason, then you shall share Ned Stark's grave. The crown names Jaime Lannister as its champion. The trial shall commence once he arrives. In the meantime, you can get comfortable in the black cells.
The remaining Kingsguard grabs Ned and leads him away. But as he leaves, he glances at Barristan, who offers him a grim nod. In truth, this is little more than a stay of execution and does little to halt the chaos beyond. Tywin and the North still war in the Riverlands, while the Baratheons gather their strength. No one dares approach King's Landing, leaving Ned alone in his cell. Ser Barristan is also confined in his chambers in the White Tower, but both accept this with quiet dignity, holding their heads high until one day a horse comes riding into the city, bearing a golden armored figure with golden hair. Ned is roughly led to the throne room by the guards, where Ser Barristan is, armored and armed. In front of him is Ser Jaime, whose usual swagger is gone, replaced with a flicker of uncertainty and grim determination.
Stark, this does not need to end in blood. Confess your crimes and we'll let you take the black. It is not I who needs to confess, sir, but you.
Seeing as there will be no peaceful resolution, both fighters draw their swords and circle one another. The hall is silent, save for the distant crackle of torches and the steady breathing of the two warriors. The Kingslayer moves first, feinting to the left before slashing right in a blur. However, the old knight sees this movement and steps back, pushing the blade back and countering with a backswing that forces Ser Jaime to retreat. This is only for a moment, though, as he advances yet again, advancing in a rapid series of strikes. His eyes don't leave Ser Barristan as he thrusts and slashes at him. His movements are fast and his technique perfect, but Barristan the Bold checks each one with methodical grace. Beads of sweat form on his head as the old knight tries to hold him back. If this continues, he knows he will be worn out. As he turns one final slash, Barristan reverses and thrusts his sword out. It bounces against Jaime's breastplate, but the blow is enough to rattle him. His next strike comes out clumsily as he lunges. Barristan sidesteps, delivering a punishing riposte that forces the young knight back. Now it is his turn to go on the offensive, advancing in a slow but methodical attack that leaves Jaime on the defensive. Unused to being the one having to protect himself, he begins to falter, and Ser Barristan thumps his breastplate more and more, each one a warning, commanding that he yield. Frustration flashes in Jaime's eyes. He steps in, launching a powerful overhand swing, but Barristan meets it head-on, their swords clashing above their heads. But Barristan pivots suddenly, knocking Jaime's blade wide and landing a brutal pummel strike to his ribs. Jaime staggers, gasping. Barristan does not hesitate. He drives his sword right above the gorget into Jaime's throat. The entire room goes silent as they see the Kingslayer fall, save for Barristan's strained breaths. Cersei leaps to her feet, her face going pale as she stares at the bloodied ground. She clutches Joffrey tightly while Pycelle announces that Ned Stark is deemed innocent in a trembling voice. Ned wastes no time, ordering that all of them are to be seized. The Gold Cloaks hurry to obey and detain Pycelle, Joffrey, Cersei, Littlefinger, and their household. Word is sent to Stannis, urging him to return and claim his throne. In the meantime, Ned continues to act as regent, ruling in his stead. He orders Littlefinger and Pycelle to be executed for their part in the coup. The King's Guard, bearing Ser Barristan, are all dismissed, and word is sent to Tywin's bannermen. As Joffrey no longer sits on the throne, they will be considered outlaws rebelling against the crown. That is, unless they take their levies and march them home. Hearing this, the bannermen are quick to retreat, their fear of losing their seats briefly overriding their fear of Tywin Lannister. Soon the Old Lion is left with only a handful of retainers and a few thousand men. These are easily defeated by Roose Bolton, while Robb Stark chases Jaime's host out of Riverrun. By the time Stannis arrives, Ned has managed to create some semblance of order within the capital, allowing Stannis to take the throne in relative peace. The Lord of Dragonstone regards Ned coolly, giving no compliments, but thanking him for his help in backing his claim. They proclaim Joffrey a bastard born of incest, and use Gendry's image as proof of this, showing how a Baratheon should look. With the Lannister forces shattered, no one can challenge this notion. However, that does not mean that the realm is entirely at peace. In the south, Renly still gathered his host, and managed to gain the allegiance of the Tyrells. Rather than be discouraged by their victory over the Lannisters, Renly is now fully committed to fighting. With Joffrey removed, he can now press his claim, and more importantly, after abandoning Ned Stark, Renly knows he will likely be stripped of his titles, putting him in a position where he has no choice but to fight. Stannis has no qualms about this either, and begins gathering his banners to fight. With the Crownlands under his control, he begins raising new levies, and is joined by the Northmen and Riverlords who pledge allegiance to him after hearing of Ned's actions. To their surprise, a few Wester Lords also pledge their allegiance, eager to prove their loyalty by getting back into the king's good graces. Among them is Tyrion Lannister, who hopes to ensure the survival of his house. He offers what remains of Lannisport's levies and the surviving knights of the West in exchange for being named ruler of Castle Rock. Stannis, seeing the wisdom in bolstering his numbers, grudgingly accepts. But even with this combined host, they number perhaps 55,000, still less than Renly's estimated 80,000 soldiers. But rather than wait for Renly to advance into the Crownlands and threaten King's Landing, Stannis instead marches south to face him in his territory. Riders are sent ahead by Adam Marbrand and the Blackfish, raiding and pillaging the territories of the Stormlands. These riders prove their worth by defeating several picket forces. Some manage to reach deeper, striking at towns providing supplies that feed Renly's army, forcing him into action. They are reinforced by men commanded by Mage Mormont and Godfrey Ferring to fight the advance force commands by Loras Tyrell. This battle is hard fought. The Tyrell Knights crash into the Stark and Riverland line, but they are met with a wall of spears and pikes. The northern archers, seasoned from battles in the Riverlands, rain arrows upon them from behind hedges and wooden stakes. Meanwhile, Stannis' vanguard, commanded by Ser Godry, launches a brutal assault on the Stormland levies, scattering them and forcing Loras to retreat. However, that is just the beginning. Stormlander infantry begins to infiltrate the same towns they had just liberated, sneaking in and ambushing garrisons there, forcing them to battle for each one. Meanwhile, Randall Tarley leads a small force of picked cavalry to strike hard at the battered Westermen. Already exhausted, they are scattered around Bronzegate, and many decide their oaths are fulfilled and retreat home. However, Stannis manages to win over some Reachmen, particularly those of House Florent, who raise rebellions in the Reach. But these are minor actions, and none of this compares to the final battle that takes place in Summerhall. The Stormlanders are the first to arrive there and waste no time trying to secure it. Led by Gaiard Morrigan and Lord Eastermont, they begin fortifying the ruined castle. As they work, though, the raiders of Brandon Tully spot them and launch a harassing run. This was just meant to skirmish with them and disrupt their work, but this soon devolves into a full battle as the men sally out and attack the raiders. A scout manages to escape and inform Robb and Ned, who leads his troops there. Stannis orders their entire army to rush there as Renly also gets word and begins organizing his defenses. However, in his hurry, he outpaces his army and only has 15,000 men, which he forms up in the high grounds. This proves to be a brilliant move, as it leaves Stannis and his troops fighting in an uphill battle, facing the pikes of the rebels. The initial attack flounders back, and the men are driven back, leaving the Northmen and Westermen to conduct a fighting retreat. However, the right flank is less secure, as the ground is rockier, allowing the rivermen to make more progress. Here, Stannis commits his Crownlanders. Reinforcements from both sides begin to trickle in, strengthening their position and feeding men into the meat grinder. However, Renly's position initially appears unassailable. On the left, his men continue to drive Ned Stark's forces back, while the right, although struggling, is at least stable. Renly himself rides at the head of his army, cutting down foes with ease, his bright armor a beacon on the battlefield. However, the young knights on the left begin to get overeager and drive the Northmen back, descending the hill and opening up a gap. One person who notices this is Ser Barristan. Rallying whatever men he can, he rushes into the gap and hurries to assist the left flank by hitting the Stormlanders and Reachmen from the rear. Chaos soon spreads, and men throw their weapons down and surrender. Seeing this, Robb Stark rallies his men. By Grey Wind by his side, the Northmen summon another burst of strength and rush forward, this time with their forces being beaten from two sides. The line collapses, and the Westermen rush up the hill to assist the flagging Crownlanders. Seeing the battle lost, many of the Reachmen break and flee. Those surrounding Renly find their escape cut off and throw down their weapons. Renly, realizing defeat, attempts to rally his forces, but his commanders urge him to retreat. He refuses. As he fights, his horse is struck by a northern spear, sending him crashing to the ground. His battermen attempt to save him, but they are overwhelmed. Before Renly can rise, he finds himself surrounded by Crownland and Riverland soldiers.
It's over, brother.
I suppose it is. Renly is taken prisoner and marched back to King's Landing in chains. The Tyrells, sensing the winds have changed, quickly bend the knee to Stannis to preserve their influence. Loras, furious at the loss of his beloved Renly, nearly challenges Stannis to a duel, but is restrained. While Renly rebelled against the crown, blood ties spare him from death, and Ned Stark convinces him to be exiled to the Wall. Renly, knowing he has no other choice, accepts his fate with a bitter smile. The Tyrells are not spared this, and are stripped of their lordship over the Reach, which is instead transferred to House Florent. When they protest this, citing how the Lannisters will rule the Westerlands, Stannis reminds them that Tyrion and his Westermen fought for Joffrey, who at the time was technically the legal heir. Meanwhile, Renly was never in line for succession, and they joined him purely out of self-interest, and he cannot forgive that. With Renly defeated and the Reach subdued, Stannis' claim is unchallenged. The war is over, and a fragile peace reigns over Westeros. In the quiet times, Ned broaches the topic of Daenerys. Stannis had fulfilled Robert's dying request to call off the reward on Daenerys' head, though he disagreed with it. The last their spies have heard, she managed to make her way to Qarth, where she is an honored guest. There are even some claims that she is accompanied by 3 dragons that she has hatched. This is troubling news, as dragons haven't been seen in over a century, but as they receive word from the Night's Watch that there is growing trouble beyond the Wall, of wildlings and White Walkers, Ned can't help but think this is a sign. He recalls how he saw a dead stag and direwolf before being visited by Robert. This pushes him to make a radical suggestion. Perhaps Daenerys may be pardoned and allowed to return to the Seven Kingdoms.
You would pardon her? A Targaryen? A claimant? A threat?
A child. She has done nothing wrong. Are we to punish her for her father's crimes? For the sins of a dead king?
I'm not punishing anyone. I did as you asked and honored my brother's wishes, and removed the bounty on her head. She is free to live a life so long as it is not here.
And what life is that? A life of running from those who wish to curry favor for you by taking her head. A life of hardship and begging.
And what happens when she lands on our shores, with fire and blood on her lips? Will you still defend her then?
That is why we can nip this problem in the bud. I do not ask to crown her. I ask for mercy. Give her an opportunity to renounce her claim. That would put the matter to rest. The realm will not accept a queen. They did not with Rhaenyra, and they will not with her.
And yet her claim led to the Dance of Dragons, a war that set the realm ablaze.
And if we make her an enemy by casting her aside, there is more at stake than the throne, Stannis. The Night's Watch has sent word. The Wall is threatened. A greater war is coming. If Daenerys can be an ally, we should not turn her away.
This is the will of Rola. The cold rises, creeping ever closer. Ice and darkness. You will need fire to drive it back. 3 dragons have returned to the world. Do you think that is mere chance?
Silence follows. The candlelight wavers, as if uncertain of its own strength.
I do not trust her, and I will not suffer another pretender to my throne. But if she swears fealty, then perhaps. But make no mistake, Stark. You will be responsible for her actions. If she betrays us, if she turns her dragons against Westeros, then you will answer for it. You will accept the consequences.
I will.
Stannis nods and sends word for an ambassador to be sent to Daenerys. Ser Barristan volunteers for this task, heading to Karth by ship. When he arrives, he finds Daenerys in the home of one of the city's greatest merchants, Zarozoan Daxos. There she tries to gain support to retake the Iron Throne by raising an army and gathering warships. That is why it comes off as a surprise when Barristan visits her at Zaro's palace with these terms. At first, the young queen can barely believe it, and Ser Jorah urges her not to trust him, though Daenerys can see the sincerity in the man's eyes. She considers the terms carefully. Stannis is willing to relinquish Dragonstone to her and give her control of the Narrow Sea and Crackclaw's Point if she publicly renounces her claim to the throne and swears an oath to the old gods and the new, as well as the Lord of Light, that she will serve the Iron Throne. At first, she scoffs at these terms, finding them unacceptable. But despite her efforts to gather allies, they bear little fruit. The only ones who offer anything close to support are the House of the Undying and Zaro Daxos, but both of them seem to covet her dragons even more. A part of her is tempted, truly tempted to accept this offer. It would allow her to return home without having to fight. After the horrors and difficulties she's experienced in Essos, the chance to return home without a fight is a fine prospect.
Before I give my answers, tell me, Ser Barristan, what sort of man is this Stannis? I hear he is the usurper's brother. To bend my knee to him would be to acknowledge the actions his brother did to mine. I would know first, is he worth it? Is he just and kind and honorable?
Your Grace, if you are looking for kindness, then you are looking at the wrong man. But as to justice, you will find a man no more fair than him. He is as different to Robert as ice is to fire. To speak the truth, he is a difficult man, but one I am proud to serve under.
Then I shall swear allegiance to him.
A few more terms are discussed, such as what shall be done with Daenerys' followers, a pardon to Jorah Mormont, where her dragons shall be kept, and a few other issues. All of these are handled by the end of the week. Daenerys sails home alongside Ser Barristan, returning to the Seven Kingdoms for the first time in 13 years. Stannis greets her with cool courtesy, thanking her for accepting his offer and saying how he does not wish to fight with her. Ned Stark is a bit warmer, but Daenerys feels a rush of anger as she regards him. She recalls Viserys' stories about how Ned Stark was among those who took King's Landing. Though he does not seem like the cruel, savage man that she grew up hearing, she cannot bring herself to remain close with him for long. Instead, they focus their efforts on Daenerys renouncing her queenship. As expected, Stannis wishes for this to be public, and has it take place in the new Temple of R'hllor, to leave no doubt of what will happen. The grand hall of the newly constructed Temple of R'hllor is bathed in the glow of firelight that casts great shadows over the assembled lords and ladies. At the center of it all stands Daenerys Targaryen, who does not let herself be intimidated. Though she holds herself with quiet dignity, there is no mistaking the tightness in her jaw as she glances over the dais where Stannis stands. Beside him are Melisandre and Ned Stark, who give quiet nods of encouragement.
Daenerys Targaryen, you stand here today not as a queen, but as a woman given mercy. But for mercy to be granted, there must be peace, and for peace, there must be no mistaking who rules the Seven Kingdoms.
I agree. I, Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, do hereby renounce any claim to the Iron Throne of Westeros. I will not take up arms against King Stannis Baratheon, nor will I seek to press my family's claim.
Murmurs ripple through the hall. Some look relieved, others skeptical, but no one speaks against her.
Then it is done.
In exchange, you will be taken to Dragonstone.
You will have your lands, safety, and standing among the nobility. And in time, I will see to it that you are wed into a house of worth.
However, little does anyone know that Stannis and Ned have already discussed this and raised the possibility of wedding Robb Stark to Daenerys. They are of the same age and will secure her future. But more importantly, it ensures security. House Stark is a major house, so no one may claim it is beneath her station. But Ned is perhaps the only great lord who will not plot against Daenerys. It placates the former queen while neutralizing her ability to offer her hand to secure alliances. It is a bold plan, but one Ned sees the logic in, though he is still not fully sold on it. Robb's betrothal to House Frey is of little importance to Stannis, as he points out that this was made under duress for an act that House Frey should have given freely. Though Lord Frey protests, Stannis coldly warns him that he should consider himself fortunate he's allowed to remain lord of a castle as important as the twins at all. One lord who watches these proceedings is Varys. Disguised as a simple merchant, he slips out and begins writing to his comrade, Illyrio Mopentis, about these developments. Though he appears calm, in truth he is trying to hide his frustration. These changes have put a serious wrench in their plans. None of this was supposed to happen. They had wished for Daenerys to eventually return to Westeros. However, she was supposed to return to a claim in chaos and ruins, one ripe for the Targaryens. More importantly, she was supposed to return alongside the other great Valyrian, the Black Dragon, Aegon Blackfyre. To rectify this plan will take time and looking for the next great opportunity. But as Varys leaves the temple and walks among the small folk, he can sense the uncertainty in their eyes as they regard this structure. He smiles to himself. Perhaps the opportunity will not be far off. Westeros is a land filled with exciting stories and possibilities, and we love exploring them. If you want to accompany us on this journey across the 7 kingdoms and beyond, then please like, share, and subscribe to our channel.